Howdy folks, welcome back to Do and Brew. Today's project is going to be a fun one. It's building a craftsman-style surround around a patio sliding door that I installed a few weeks ago. When you're done with this project, the results are really striking, but it's not hard to do. Basic carpentry skills, not a whole lot of money, and a pretty tremendous bang for the buck when you're done. Let me give you a quick idea of what we're going to do. On this video, which is part one, we're going to be working on the jamb boards, the header, and the right and left casings. On video number two, we're going to be building out what's called the entablature, which is basically everything above the casing boards. The entire piece is called the entablature. This is the entablature base. This large open field is called the frieze. And this whole piece here is the cornice, with one large board on top, set off with a nice simple crown molding. Hey, just a quick program note, folks. The past few weeks, I've picked up a ton of subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm uploading videos as fast as I can make them. There's certainly something coming down the road that you're going to be interested in. Also, I'm kind of new to YouTube myself, but I noticed the other day that if I was watching a long video, but I didn't have time to finish it, if I hit like, I can come back and re-watch that video anytime because it's saved into my likes library. So if you don't have time to finish this video or any other videos that you're interested in, just hit like. Go back and watch them whenever you have time. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get started on this project. But first, let me put up a quick graphic to show you the different components of our door surround. You might want to pause it on this screen just to get a good idea of what's going on. I'm going to keep rolling here not to take up too much video time. So as you can see, I'm basically starting from scratch. This is part of our rebuild of this part of the house. And this is just the way I finished out the drywall and painting. Now it's time to put the surround on. So the first thing we're going to do is work on the header and jamb pieces. So let's go ahead and take some measurements. Of course yours will be different, but my jamb is 2 1/4 inches wide. We'll go ahead and rip some number 1 solid pine down to the width we need. Measure the height we need. Now it's important to note here, we have that header piece that comes across. So we want to leave ourselves 3/4 of an inch extra to accommodate that board. Here I'm truing up the bitter end of the board I'm going to cut. And I'm going to cut that to 78 1/8 inches. As always, it's a good idea to go ahead and do any finish sanding you can now. Much easier to do it on the workbench than after it's installed. Okay, here I'm just checking to make sure that I've got the 3/4 of an inch fit for the header piece. Applying liquid nails to the board and to the jamb itself. I want to make sure this thing never has an opportunity to move. We'll set her in place. I'm using a scrap piece of wood there to make sure that I'm nice and square to the drywall. That's key for when we go ahead and install the casing. Okay, now just securing it with some 2 1/2 inch finish nails with the nail gun. Of course, if you don't have a nail gun, you can nail these by hand. Not terribly difficult to do. Nail gun just makes it a little bit easier. Now I'm using that piece of scrap wood all the way down the wall. It's really important to ensure that your jamb piece is square to the wall so that the casing fits on square and just perfect. Okay, now it's time to do the left jamb side. Same as before, cutting it, liquid nails, making sure that we've got the proper 3/4 inch space at the top for our header, and then we'll go ahead and nail it. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and cut the header. Now the first cut is actually easy. True up the bitter end and then cut a 45. Sand it, of course, as always, before we install it. And I like using that sponge sander to get rid of those mechanical sand marks whenever you can. Alright, and then here, again, liquid nails. Usually glue for wood against wood, but when I'm going like a good finished type of wood against stud lumber, I like to use that liquid nails. That in here, making sure that it is true with the right side jam piece. That's really, really important, folks. It's got to be perfectly lined up with that before you start nailing. Now what I'll do is I'll put that one nail in, and then I'll make sure it's true, and then go back and nail. Now you see I'm using that scrap wood against the top there too for the same reason, making sure it's square to the wall. Okay, now I've cut the 45 on the end there as you saw, and now I'm going to mark for my straight cut. This keeps the measuring to a minimum. We'll go ahead and cut that guy on the miter saw. Okay, now that that cut's made, liquid nails, more glue, and you can see I'm putting quite a bit of glue there on that miter joint. I want to make sure that's glued up nice and heavy. You don't ever want that coming apart. Okay, now we'll take some time to get that nice and lined up. It's another critical point. You want to make sure that that's lined up as close to perfectly true as possible, because the lower side of your entitler is going to sit on that, and you don't want any gaps. We'll nail it using the scrap piece of wood to make sure we're flush with the front, and tacking it in all the way down. Okay, now it's time to measure and cut our left casing. I'm going to go ahead and cut that to 78 1/4. Doing this one a little bit backwards, now I'll rip it to width, which is 3 1/4. Now I've got a little bit of a challenge here. The countertop comes a little bit closer to the door than really I'd like, but I want to have a nice width of a casing, so I've got to cut out to allow the casing to come around the countertop just a little bit. I think in the end it's going to look nice custom look. Now I'm taking the depth measurement here. Looks like 1 1/4 inches. We'll mark that. Marking it on the lower and now the upper side. Using my square to draw a true line. Then we'll take it out to the workbench and cut it out with the jigsaw. Not a terribly challenging cut. Cut that out, and truth be told, folks, I made the cut, brought it in, and had to make one adjustment cut so it would go just a little bit deeper, but after that adjustment it fit really nicely. And as you may notice here, I've got both casings already cut out. I'm working on the one that goes around the countertop right now, but as always I like to sand before install, and then I'm going to ease the outside edge, the edge that you could touch after it's put together, just to make it look a little bit more custom. Okay, now applying glue for wood meets wood, liquid nails for everything else. Okay, now here is a spacer block I made up. That's about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit heavy. But what that does is it gives me a nice reveal, makes a nice shadow line all the way around the door surround. What that block does is it ensures that I have a standard reveal without having to do a whole lot of measuring. So I'll use that all the way around to give me that 1/8 inch. Now it's important to note that the casing board is cut to 7 1/4, and that gives me the 1/8 inch reveal across the top. And then I'll go ahead and secure it with some nails. Now what I'm doing here is I'm actually using a 1.5 inch crown staple, where it's the casing against the jamb, and then where it's the casing against the drywall, I'm using a 2.5 inch nail, and that nail is going through the drywall and into the stud on the other side. That ensures that this piece of wood is never going to move. And of course I'm backing that up with liquid nails on the back side. Hey, here's another good close-up look of using the spacer block. I'll use that all the way around the left and right side, as well as to ensure that the lower side of the entablature is properly spaced. Now you see that glue squeeze out there. I'm going to flip my spacer block around and use that sharp edge to pick up excess glue. Then I'll go back with a sponge and wipe that down. Trust me folks, you want to get all the glue out that you can, because it is so much harder to sand and remove after the fact. Okay, now we're going to move over to the left casing. Okay, and it's glue for wood beats wood, and it's liquid nails for really wood meets anything else. In this case, it's painted drywall. So you can see that that cut is almost about as nice as I can make it. Use my spacer block to get that 1/8 inch reveal. It's looking pretty nice. Now I'm going to go ahead and secure this part right here, right along the countertop. That's a critical point where if I secure the top or the bottom first, I might have a hard time getting that to look nice and true, and that's where your eye is going to be drawn. Now I'll go down using the spacer block, securing it as I go. Get that bottom nice and secure. We'll move up to the top, get the spacing, pop in some nails, and we're looking pretty good. Okay guys, well that completes video number 1. Wasn't too bad getting to this point, and honestly the next video, part 2, where we build the entablature, that's where you get the nice pop from your door surround with the real pretty cornice, the crown molding, and that nice frieze board. Really has a nice traditional old style look to it, but again it's simple. So hey, join me for part 2 as we finish out the craftsman style door surround. Thanks a lot for watching guys, we'll see you next time.